Are we recording this?
We will be live on Bright House in approximately 30 seconds. We'll be live on Bright House in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
This is the special school board meeting of January 27, 2016. Pam, roll call, please.
Mr. Craig?
Present.
Mrs. Belford?
Present.
Mr. Ziegler?
Present.
Mrs. Nisi?
Here.
And Mrs. Henderson?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That brings us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Blackburn.
Mr. Ziegler and members of the board, we have two items on this afternoon's agenda. Item 5 is the accreditation exit presentation. Item 6 is a supplemental consent item added by Mr. Ziegler regarding Brevard's specific interests during the 2016 legislative session. This item appears on your yellow supplemental agenda as it was added after the agenda was released to the public.
Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Nisi. Was that second by Mrs. Henderson? Did I hear that right? Henderson. And we will do a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 5-0. Over the past 4 days, Brevard Public Schools has been hosting the external review visit for the renewal of system accreditation. The purpose of the review is to determine the degree to which the school district as a system meets the advanced ed accreditation standards. Dr. Blackburn.
A national external review team of 17 educators arrived on Sunday and has spent their time in Brevard interviewing a wide range of system and school level stakeholders, examining artifacts, conducting school visits, and engaging in professional deliberations to evaluate the school district's adherence to the advanced ed quality standards. In addition, they have assessed the impact of the system's continuous improvement process and the effectiveness of our methods for quality assurance. Kathy Sargent, lead evaluator and chair of the external review team, will now present the team's findings. Ms. Sargent?
Thank you, Dr. Blackburn. I would first like to introduce or reintroduce our team to those of you who have had the pleasure of meeting them before.
Could you step up to the microphone, please, so everybody hears you? Thank you.
I would first like to introduce the team, have the team introduce themselves to you so that you can understand the scope of the folks who were here during the past 4 days in terms of this being a national effort. I would start out by saying that we have one team member, Cheryl, who was unable to be with us today. She had an illness in her family. It caused her to have to leave very early this morning, but she has participated in the review up until this point. I'd like to start with my associate lead evaluator, Larry Davis.
I get the mic. Phyllis Sanders from Columbia, South Carolina.
Peggy Jones, Pasco County Schools, Florida.
I'm Lynette Parkhurst from Laramie, Wyoming.
And I'm Bill Craig from Richmond, Virginia.
Nick Clement, Tucson, Arizona.
Penny Reddick, Harris County Schools, Georgia.
Tony Wiersma, Okeechobee County Schools, Florida.
LaVoice Taylor Smith, Wellington, Florida.
Mary Minich, Lake County Schools, Florida.
Carrie Gilcher, Collier County Schools, Florida.
Carmen Pugh Banks, Columbia, South Carolina.
Paula Leftwich, Lakeland, Florida.
Thank you. This team was incredible and spent many more hours awake and interviewing stakeholders and deliberating and writing than they ever did sleeping this week. So it was a long week, but one that we truly have appreciated the honor and opportunity to have. I think I forgot to mention, too, that I am from Michigan. Thank you, Teresa, again, for helping me. It's been our pleasure to be a part of this external review process. The 4 days that we have spent here, however, have been really anticlimactic to the effort that you as a system have put forth during the internal review period, which precedes every external review visit. So this is really our opportunity to view your findings and confirm them, and also to illuminate any things that we have spotted and identified that can help you on your continuous journey towards improvement for your students. This is not something that ever is finished, and that's something that those of us in this business are, you just look at it and you say, you'll never get there. But we keep trying and we keep working hard to improve. And that is the business of continuous improvement in education. Advance Ed is the organization celebrating 10 years actually this year. The global leader in providing continuous improvement and accreditation. The important thing to remember here is that we serve 32,000 students in worldwide actually. And our greatest source of pride is the fact that we impact the lives of 20 million students. And that is both a huge responsibility and a huge honor. Accreditation is an international protocol by which institutions around the world are committed to what I like to call the S-test. The S-test means that you are committed to being systemic, systematic, and sustainable. Systemic because you are committed to having processes and practices that are actually woven through the fabric of your district, that we make sure are aligned and contribute to this beautiful mission that you have for all students. Systematic because you have the steps that are involved to help you get there, that everyone understands, very clear guidelines and very clear steps that get you there. And sustainable because what you are endeavoring to do is to make sure that you are putting in place practices that become enculturated, that become a part of the way you do business and don't rest on your shoulders. So should you go out to be queen of the universe, those practices and processes would stay in Brevard County because they had become a part of the way you do business. And so it's really important to consider the notion that accreditation and continuous improvement is about the way you move on a regular basis, keeping those things in mind. It's about helping the system build the capacity and engage schools to reach their full capacity to make this happen in classrooms for kids. So it is a total district approach. We are also going to share the efficiency and effectiveness and improvement that we have observed through the course of our time here. The external review process is really a diagnostic process. It's one that we use to spur on and guide continuous improvement. We classify the standards that we use as the markers for our observations and our findings and our data collection into 3 categories. One is the impact of teaching and learning, and there are 2 standards that are the focal point for that domain, standards 3 and 5, for those of you who understand the nomenclature of the standard system. Capacity of leadership, which includes standards 1 and 2, and the use of resources and the utilization of practices that support those resources. The external review team has been entrusted with the responsibility to use our best judgment in reflecting and collaborating on our findings through the course of our time here, and we have classified them into the following categories. School districts that are producing results and showing great accomplishments and strategies and efforts will be given powerful practices by virtue of our findings. And we've identified some that we think are really good practices and ones that we hope you continue to utilize and, in fact, to grow as you can. Opportunities for improvement are just that. Those things that we have cited that are on their way but may have just with a little bit more emphasis, be able to really make a difference in terms of the practices that you put forward. Improvement priorities are those things that we have identified as the big ticket items. We've helped you with your prioritizing of your next steps along the continuous improvement journey by giving you a few improvement priorities to start your journey. The Index of Educational Quality is a quantification of our findings as it relates to the world of accreditation. So at the end of this presentation, we'll give you some information about the future of accreditation for Brevard County, but we also will give it to you in a quantified fashion as well. Ultimately, that accreditation recommendation, I always think that it should be at the beginning of this slide presentation, but they haven't given me permission to do it that way, so I guess we'll just have to wait. Over the course of our time here, we did not spend our time talking to 1 or 2 or 100 people. We spent our time here talking to 521 people. What I'm most excited about is this list that includes conversations with 195 students. So not only did we spend time here at the district office talking to the leaders of the school district and ultimately the leaders of schools, once we got into the classrooms in the schools, we were able to talk to kids. And so having substantive conversations with them and having them help us identify the things that are going well for them and those kinds of things to us was a really, really important piece of it, because they are obviously the reason that we're all here. So that first domain of which we spoke is the teaching and learning impact. And there are several things that we take a look at in here. We're looking at student performance results, and of course Brevard County has enjoyed some positive student performance results, and that's been no secret to any of us. We look at the instructional quality, and by that we had the opportunity to spend time in many classrooms throughout the district. Learner and family engagement, and these were areas, all of these areas were also reflected in the internal review. Support services, those services we have in place to help our learners maximize their potential to be successful. Curriculum quality and efficacy, and ultimately college and career readiness data, and how well are our students prepared for their next level of their life. So the findings that we have in the area of teaching and learning. First of all, a powerful practice. Remember, I cited that these were those practices that we think are worth continuing. And in many cases, and this one in particular, if leveraged well, can also be a model and a way for you to be successful reaching the strategies that you have, some of the other strategies that you need to have with some of the areas with which you're challenged. We believe the system provides meaningful ways for teachers to meet to explore strategies that improve student learning. So when we say this, we heard the story about the fact that several years ago, the Dufours were here to sort of introduce the concept of professional learning communities, and I'll refer to that as the capital P, capital L, capital C approach. And that what has evolved is the current status in 2016, in which we have some schools engaged in that capital P, capital L, capital C endeavor, but we also have some who are in collaborative communities. And that isn't my term. It is a term that we heard several different times during the course of our time together. Collaborative communities, collaborative groupings that allowed for teachers to spend time talking with each other, learning from each other, and supporting each other. And that is a mechanism that we believe has been extremely helpful in promoting and trying to help bring all teachers up to the standard that we need to have here in order to be successful in meeting the needs of students. So when I said earlier they can leverage, remember this is a continuous improvement journey, and while we saw a lot of that happening, we know there are ways that that can be embellished to even do a greater job. We have an improvement priority, and remember this is a category to which the district is held accountable. And there will be an expectation that this is addressed and that Brevard County School District report back to Advance Ed on the success with which you're meeting this particular priority. We believe that it's necessary to establish, monitor, and evaluate a process that ensures all students, each student, every student, has equitable and challenging learning opportunities. This speaks to your mission. Your mission says that you will serve every student, and basically what we're talking about is this pursuit of excellence for each of them. We saw many examples of really high quality, challenging learning opportunities in classrooms, but there were very many that were not. And so what we need to understand is that we need to kind of use, if we can even go back to that powerful practice I just cited, using that strategy might be a way of ensuring that we promote this within our own by capitalizing on those positive practices that are going on and building more of those and helping assure confidence in the classrooms of teachers who maybe are not quite there. I know that's happening. I don't mean to say that it isn't, but it needs to be, we need to make that proliferate the whole system. The third improvement priority in this domain is to establish, evaluate, and implement a continuous improvement process with clear guidelines to ensure alignment with the system's purpose. This is talking about the strategic plan. You're on the threshold of a new strategic plan. You're working on collecting data from various avenues. Dr. Blackburn has spent an incredible amount of time listening and getting information back from stakeholders. That information, coupled with other sources, the results of your own internal review, plus our experiences, hopefully will then be a part of designing this plan that when properly articulated, communicated, and implemented, will really have the impact that you're all seeking. So the listening is happening, the action is ahead, and that's when the excitement begins. So we're really looking forward for this plan to reflect the mission that you have for all your students. Develop, implement, and monitor a comprehensive plan for professional learning in the use of performance matters, particularly incorporating Unify. We heard throughout the district that this was an investment that the district made to provide an answer to the need for data utilization, to provide an opportunity for us to analyze data, to take a look at it. It's happening some places. It's happening by some people in some places, but it's not at all anywhere near systemic. And so, but we also heard from you that the reason for that is that there isn't the confidence to use this as a tool that can make it be a very valuable resource to answering the questions that you need to improve the quality of instruction, to be able to help make those important instructional decisions. So we really believe that a focus and an intensive focus on training with respect to performance matters, re-upping that. We know you've done it, and we know people admit to have had it, but it just has kind of fallen off the radar in terms of something that has been able to be implemented. But if you're truly going to be a continuous improving district, continuously improving district, you need to be able to rely on that data and use that data to drive improvement, to drive change, because that's what's important in a continuously improving district. Another piece of data came from the 183 classrooms that we visited while we were here. We divided and conquered and spent a half a day in each of the schools to which we had the opportunity. We visited 20 schools so that we had the opportunity to learn about what is going on within the school district, within the classrooms. It's sort of like we came here to, see the big picture with the district, and then ultimately we're able to get to the heart of where things happen, and that's in the classroom. There are 7 domains. And if you look at this list, the first column obviously lists the domains. The second one talks about the results from this external review in terms of the average scores that we got through our own analysis, and the Advanced Ed Network average score. Again, looking at those 32,000 schools from around the world and the classrooms therein, that was the average score that we're looking at. So I think when you look at this, you see a pretty close alignment to that middle ground, the average ground within those. The things I would like to draw your attention to is the area of the well-managed learning environment. We were very, very pleased with the fact that it looked like the students were very respectful of each other. They were working to be very heavily engaged. They really wanted to be a part of a positive learning experience, and they were definitely demonstrating that. Obviously, we were visitors in the classroom. We recognize that. But I think you all know that visitors in classrooms are frequent enough that it doesn't really alter the operation of what goes on in those classrooms. It's sort of like, oh, okay, and then back to work they were. A couple of other ones, a supportive learning environment, an active learning environment. Again, speaking to some student engagement, we saw some really good examples of students really engaged in their learning and participating. And that was really reassuring to us. Obviously, it's when the students really become a part of the actual learning activities and are just not, observers on the outside, but they're really a part of it internally, that we really are able to accomplish what it is that we're seeking to do. The digital learning environment in every school around the world is the lowest category. And let me just say this about the digital learning environment. This is speaking to the manner in which students are using technology in the classroom for their learning. So we were in classrooms for a minimum of a 20-minute period of time. During that time, we did see some evidence of students using technology. But we also saw a lot of evidence of teachers using technology. There was technology in the classrooms for the most part, and teachers were using it as a teaching tool. That is not what this reflects. This is here to be able to tell you that this is about using the digital environment for supporting student learning. So students actually engaged with the technology. And yes, we did see some evidence of that, but not very much. And I will fully admit we were in the classroom for 20 minutes, and it probably wasn't the 20 minutes that happened in some cases. But again, this is what we were able to observe during the time we were there using the tool we had available. Very similar to any other of the schools around the world, that is the lowest area. You all need to determine where digital learning fits in terms of the modalities that are important for students as part of their palette of learning strategies. And then you determine how or when this fits into that. The leadership capacity, the next domain, talks about governance and leadership, in particular looking at stakeholder feedbacks, improvement capacity, results through the stakeholder feedback. There's a powerful practice here, and that has to do with the implementation of the standards-based professional development for site-based and aspiring administrators. We think the Leadership Academy that you have identified for principals, people that would like to enter the ranks of being administrators, is a very powerful tool. And we think that that speaks to the need for continued planning with succession types of activities, and it also can be a model for some types of trainings that maybe some other populations, some other groups within the school district could benefit. So that seems to be a very effective way for you to train administrators and to help them be ready and queue up in the pipeline. And please feel free to take our recommendation that that's something good to kind of jump onto as a strategy for future development. Resource utilization is the next area, the next domain, and we do in this area talk about the allocation of resources, equity of resource distribution, the sustainability of resources, and the long-range planning, long-range capital planning. We have a powerful practice here, and that has to do with the facilities. We found the facilities to be very healthy, very clean, and in many cases, we know these are not new facilities, but you certainly have done a great job of maintaining them and making them quality environments in which students can learn. We believe that it's the broad planning that you put forth in the area of facilities, and that coupled with action is what gets you the product that we were able to reflect on. So, sometimes we have a plan, but we don't quite get to put it into action, and so things don't happen. But this is an area in which we see that as a really strong, positive thing for the district. Okay, so in conclusion, we want to share with you the Index of Educational Quality. This puts together scores of quantification for the areas of the domains, teaching and learning, strategic direction, and resources. And we want to make sure that you consider this as a formative analysis, a way in which you might then propel yourself again towards a mark. It's, kind of a building mark opportunity, as our little ones we make those marks on our wall or the refrigerator or wherever. That's the way that this can be, because this is the first time that you've received this kind of a score. And then it allows us for ways in which we can be able to move forward with our planning. Okay, so the IEQ results are this: the Index of Educational Quality. The first column is the identification of the 3 domains. There's an overall score, and there are the 3 domains that follow. The next column has to do with our findings. So every one of us on the team rated each of the standards and indicators, and this is an average scoring times 100, obviously, to give it kind of our scoring system, as you know, from those of you that participated in the rating, was between a 1 and a 4. So that times 100 gives us a range for scoring here of a 100 to 400. So the overall, and then the last column is that advanced ed network average, which reflects where the advanced ed schools systems around the world all fall. So you will see that the overall score is a 250, teaching and learning impact a 234.52, leadership capacity is a 268.75, the resource utilization is a 262.50. Each of these scores falls below the advanced ed network average, which is not something at all for us to think any less of ourselves about. It's an important thing for us to acknowledge that there are schools that will fall above us and schools that will fall below us in terms of this range. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a benchmark. It's a place for us, it's a placeholder at this particular point in time. You all have spent a lot of time identifying many of the things that we've shared. We didn't talk about anything that isn't something you already had talked about needing to work on and improve. You have that course ahead set forward for you. And so now that journey begins with some additional data. So the important thing to focus on here is the fact that accreditation isn't just about being good enough. It's about pursuing excellence. It's about that continuous improvement and trying to get better and not resting on laurels of, we're accredited, or or those who choose not to be, that isn't an important qualifier. But it isn't about that being just good enough. Now it has an expectation that continuous improvement is really what we're about. That's just a repeated slide, sorry, with the individual scores. So the IEQ results definitely identify that the school system is performing within acceptable ranges, and that when compared to the expected criteria with other institutions throughout the advanced ed network. So you're to be congratulated on being within that range. Furthermore, it is the recommendation of our team that the Brevard County School System be recommended for accreditation by Advanced Ed. This would be a good time to clap. We have no reservations whatsoever about that, and this recommendation will be forwarded to the state office, who takes it to the accreditation commission, and they ultimately will make that final stamp of approval, but we have absolutely no qualification there. So lots of great effort, lots of great work goes into this, and now the big work continues to sustain, back to that S-test, to sustain this rating. Okay. Just a little word of a reminder in the spirit of continuous improvement. The improvement priorities, as I mentioned earlier, are those to which you're held accountable. You have 2 years to respond to those. That will be essentially the beginning of your journey, because those are the items that we say we need to see some action on first. You will find additional feedback in the written report that you'll be supplied with that will help you identify what are some other areas that maybe we can capitalize on for those areas that were strong, or what are some other areas that we might need to help improve along the way. Your deliberate and strategic actions are what will continue to ensure that every child every day is being prepared to achieve their future. Final thoughts. The external review team wants to make sure that we acknowledge and appreciate your hospitality, support, professionalism, particularly the leadership of Dr. Teresa Wright in the review planning. She would probably say that there are some other people around here that helped, but we really know who was in charge, don't we, team? We know. It was Teresa we went to when we needed something. We also want to respect and acknowledge the efforts throughout the district to improve the quality of your institution. This isn't something that happens with just one person thinking it's an important thing to do. But it is a cast of literally thousands that make this happen and make every day happen here at Brevard County Schools. Congratulations to your system and community on completing the requirements for Advanced Ed school system accreditation, because you are creating a world of opportunities for every learner. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I got to share with everybody that, and I shared with Kathy when I met with her, is that I was a little nervous. I didn't know what to prepare for. I didn't study, and I said, wouldn't it be terrible if all because of me we didn't get accredited? So we had a great conversation, and yeah, I was looking in, and because of Mr. Ziegler, yeah, no. So I'm glad we didn't see that. I did enough of that when I was in grade school. So thank you very much. It was a very enjoyable conversation. Anybody else like to make a comment? Dr. Blackburn?
No, sir, just to thank the entire team, thank the evaluation team. Kathy, we really appreciate the third-party objective review of our strengths and our opportunities, and hopefully I speak for the entire organization. We look forward to not meeting but exceeding the expectations laid out in front of us. So thank you. And to our internal folks, I just want to echo what you said about Dr. Wright. She was a phenomenal nag to all of us to make sure we were in the right places, doing the right things. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't publicly acknowledge her efforts here. Thank you and the rest of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, we'll now take a brief recess to allow members of the team to leave, and then we will continue with our meeting afterwards.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
That brings us back. We do not have anybody signed up to speak. So at this time, I would like to proceed with consent item 5, which is regarding Brevard's specific interest during the 2006 legislative session. I'm reading. Is it 6? Should have put my glasses on. Okay. And I will start off, since I placed this on the agenda. I had contemplating putting this proposal on our agenda for our last meeting and held off because I thought we might come up with some other proactive options for helping out the effort at the state level for our federally connected concerns. And since we don't have, in my opinion, a solid solution to joining in on that, other than, and I do understand we have a lobbying firm, Mixon Associates, I believe that, especially since, by the way, this is a Brevard initiative that we started several years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago. We were concerned about revenue for a variety of reasons, especially because of encumbered land and federal land, military bases. There used to be a federal, there is a federal supplement for impact, but it's gone down significantly. In speaking to our legislators, they thought that maybe this was an opportunity to generate some additional revenue, but come up with a means of doing so that was fair for counties across the state. And so we engaged down that road. Dr. Bingley was very involved in crafting a technical formula to present, and it took a couple of years, but eventually it got funded. Unfortunately, due to some of the turmoil in the legislature last year with the House taking their football and going home early, a lot of things didn't get done or get done as expected due to those distractions, and this funding was not permanent. This year is as we know, is a year where Brevard is in leadership. That won't occur next year. It's believed that if this is not made permanent this year, that our chances of bringing it back in subsequent years are little to none. So I felt that it was important to bring this to the board so they actually had something to decide, either up or down. Yes, we want to put all in. We want to participate. We want to assist. And the only way to do that at this point in time would be with a short-term contract with somebody to assist us. I'll say that I absolutely agree with Dr. Blackburn's long-term strategy of analyzing what's in the best interest of our district to advocate for our needs, both state and local. And that'll be part of the strategic plan going forward. But at this time, time is of the essence, and we need to decide whether we are going to stand up alongside of our legislators and show that we care. I understand that some believe that it is very strong possibility that this will fly without our efforts. However, as we've been told time and time again, there are about 3,000 bills a year filed, and about 100 of them pass. If it was that sure of a thing that a legislator's desires got implemented, we would have 3,000 bills passing a year. So just because it may look good right now, I don't believe that there's any guarantees. On the other side, getting assistance from somebody, there's no guarantees either. But I think it's important to show legislators that we're willing to participate, because if we don't take interest in what we need, then why would they take interest in what they need? City councils, county commissions, they all participate in the process of lobbying. We do so through an organization that represents, I believe, over 12 other school districts. I think going forward, we need to focus on what's in the best interest of Brevard and have somebody advocating specifically for Brevard, but that's a whole other conversation another time. So right before us, we have a contract proposal from a Mark Maxwell, and I want to explain how that came about so everybody understands. part of our conversations of figuring out what to do, I had spoken to many of our legislators and asked them, what's it look like for Brevard up there? Who's talking to them about Brevard? And I got the same story from everybody, that nobody's speaking specifically for Brevard. During that conversation and speaking with that Altman, he, of course, saying the same thing, he, at that time, finding out that he didn't realize that the Federally Connected was not permanent. And I said, well, what can we do? And he says, well, we really need somebody on the ground helping out with that. And I said, well, that's not my cup of tea. Who do you recommend? Is there anybody? And he said, well, he thinks we need somebody technical, somebody who understands the FEFP and can help craft a good argument, good technical solution and formula that everybody will agree upon. And that's how this gentleman came to us. He didn't just come out of the blue. He didn't just solicit for our business. I was looking for recommendations from legislators on how we can help support that. That being the case, this is before us now. The proposals for $24,000 and for a short period of time. Based on our position in the session right now, I have some issue with exactly what's being proposed to us. I'd like to hear our other board members' opinions, but what I ultimately would like to suggest, if it was up to me, I would suggest we set a not to exceed amount, a lower amount, and I don't see the purpose in the short period of time being proposed, because until the governor signs the budget, nothing's guaranteed. So I would think we would need to be assured that this individual will be actively involved in seeing this all the way through budget approval, which I think is about end of June sometime. So I would suggest that if we agree to move forward with this, that we require some different parameters on this contract. Anybody like to speak to this? Mrs. Henderson. Sure.
Take me some time. Okay, first of all, I was kind of surprised to find out about this on Friday, especially since what is written here was done in December. It seems to me if this was important enough to bring forward, either by Thad or by you or by anybody, we as a board should have known more of the details in December. Somebody should have called me on the 9th, 10th, or 11th if the meeting was on the 10th. That's the way I feel about it. The $24,000 is way out of line, in my opinion, because the original says it'll be January 1 through March 11, and now you're saying through the governor signing, which will be in usually the end of May. Maybe it'll be sooner, but the other thing is, for me, this is just too little too late, because yesterday, the Federally Connected was put into the Senate Appropriations Bill as recurring dollars. I spoke, you guys didn't give me a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of research since Friday, so I started it on Monday. I've talked to legislators, I've talked to counterparts around the state, I've talked to districts who are mentioned in here. This just isn't going to work for me. As far as creating a coalition, because I was also told that one of the things they wanted to do is create a coalition of those 12 districts, but that is actually part of what Dr. Bingley did when he got this together, because all 12 of the districts were together working on this. So that coalition, although loosely, perhaps, is formed. So I don't need to pay somebody to do that. Those connections are already there based on we're all getting those same funds. And let's just not, the information that I got yesterday from legislators, senators, other districts, watching it go on the appropriations bill, which I sent everybody yesterday that it is recurring money. We have Krista Foley, who's fighting for it on the representative side. And one of the things that was stated to be by that Altman was that, it wouldn't be just getting it on permanent, which I believe if, Gates is the chairman of the Senate Appropriations. He's got 2 counties that are affected. Krista Foley has us that's affected. If those guys can't do it, nobody's going to do it. That's number one. And the amount of money, the other thing that had told me was that it would not be just getting it on permanently, but it would be increasing the funds potentially. But let's just not make any mistake about what that means, because what that really means is we're not getting more money. We're taking it from a pot someplace else that we don't know about yet. We don't know which pot it's going to come from. You're not going to get, so total funding isn't going to change. It's going to take it out of this bucket and put it into this bucket. So I'm not sure that we need to pay somebody to do that. I tried to find a reason to be for this, and based on where we are in the legislative process, I cannot support this.
Mrs. Nisi?
Thank you. I can't multitask either. I'm supporting this for a different reason. And it's not coming at it from a bill standpoint. It's coming at it from the standpoint is that this year they're actually opening up the FEFP formula, which they haven't done for over 10 years. The phone calls I made, which was a surprise to me, is that it's not so much the bill I'm concerned about. What's a concern for me is that they're actually opening up the formula. And when I did some checking and I called Thad and I talked to some other people, is that they're actually opening up the formula itself. And the last time they did that, the formula, and those of you that have taken the finance module, and I don't know if I think the 2 new board members, you've taken it, it's a whole page, that whole formula. And it's so complicated, they actually have to bring in their own consultants to see what happens when you tweak one part of the formula, what happens to another part of it. And so this consultant, and I'm actually calling him a consultant as opposed to a lobbyist, has been a part of that process before. And he is actually going to go in and represent our interests as a part of that formula. And that's what I'm concerned about, is that our county, along with a few others, has been penalized for many, many years because of our federally impacted lands. And a bill isn't going to fix that. So yes, there's a bill out there for the federally impacted lands, but just like the DCD, when I first came on the board, the DCD, which is the differential based on where you live at in Florida, for every dollar, at one point we only got 93 cents back. Now we actually get more for every dollar, but that changed throughout. That was a part of this formula. He was a part of that process. He's going to represent Brevard as a part of that formula in all of those areas. He is a math guru. This is what he does. I'm a math major, so I graduated with a degree in that, and I find the formula very challenging to work with. But this is where our dollars come to for Brevard, is the FEFP formula. And this is where we can make a difference, is having someone represent us in this FEFP formula. This is our one shot. And so that is where I feel we would get the most bang for our buck. Yes, it is a federally impacted land, but we still have the DCD hanging out there. We still have other parts of that. I think it's 4 rows of an algebraic formula where we plug in. And this person is going to see how Brevard is affected every step of that way. And I can guarantee you, if they're opening up that formula now, they're not going to open up that formula again for many, many years. Bill or no bill, we weren't represented at that table 10 years ago. And the only way we're going to be represented is this person. And this person, whether you want to say he's politically connected or not, he worked for Governor Child's office, he worked for Governor Bush's office, he's worked both sides of the table. He's a math nerd. I mean, let's just be honest. And he's going to see what's best for Brevard County students. You know, I don't have any skin in this fight. I'm not doing this for election purposes. I'm doing this to ensure that we get as many dollars for Brevard students. We saw the math last year when Dr. Bingley was here. We're losing close to $20 million because of our federally impacted lands out there, and we get about $2.8 million back for that. I'm willing to roll the dice to send somebody out there to get some of that money back. And there are no guarantees until the governor signs on the dotted line that we're going to see that. And I don't see how we can't do that. I think we owe it to Brevard County to ensure that we get those dollars. So I will be supporting this today.
Thank you. Sounds like Ms. Henderson and I spent the weekend and Monday doing the same thing. As I too
Separately,
was,
of course.
Separately, yes, yes. But as I too was kind of taken by surprise when it came on the 19th, and this information started coming out. It was the first I'd heard of it. So I will say that, first of all, we are participating. To say that we are not participating in the fight for FEF for federally connected funds is, I think, disingenuous. We have a firm that we've hired. We've given them a strategic set of goals, one of which is the protection and expansion, if we can, of federally connected funding. And you know, that's what we hired them for. So to say that we aren't participating and that we don't have anybody up there fighting for us or advocating for us is simply not true. Specifically, when you talk to individual legislators and they say, absolutely, they're in here talking to us. Rich Workman has a meeting with them tomorrow to discuss this specifically. So we are participating and we do have an advocate there. I found it interesting in my research that Senator Gates, that is the champion of this bill or of this funding, represents, of course, Okaloosa County and Santa Rosa County. Now, Santa Rosa County and Escambia County are represented by our lobbying firm, Mixon and Associates. Okaloosa County employs no lobbyist whatsoever. Went to them, asked them, yes, that is true. Went on the lobbyist website. Okaloosa has not spent a dime doing this. So what that tells me is that we have a teammate or a leader of our team right now in our lobbying firm that is representing two of the largest, besides ourselves, impacted districts, and that the person championing that cause seems to be pretty comfortable with the job that they're doing. Otherwise, he would be on the phone with Okaloosa and with Escambia and Santa Rosa going, well, you guys are kind of falling on the ball here. I need some help. That is not happening. So also the Hillsborough County. So you've got MacDill, CENTCOM, Fifth Fleet, all right there in headquartered in Tampa. Big impact to them as well. Their individual lobbyist has partnered with our lobbyist in order to make sure that they're talking on the same page and at the same for the same information. As far as opening up the FEFP and changing and having the skin in the game, what I'll say is, if in fact that is happening, have we asked our firm to get involved? Have we told our firm that this is a priority? Have we gone to Mixon and Associates, sat down with them and said, where is your expertise in this area, and can you provide us with a level of service that is specific to Brevard? And here specifically are our concerns from a Brevard point of view, realizing that the FEFP is going to affect obviously the entire state. But before I'm going to go hire some person, to be quite honest, hasn't worked with FEFP since 2001 when he started his own firm, and has the only school system he's represented since then is the Florida Virtual School. That doesn't give me a warm and fuzzy that somebody can come in 15 years later and go and step right into it and go, yep, I'm the FEFP guy and I'm going to fight for the money that Brevard needs. and when we haven't asked our own firm exactly what they can provide, I think that's putting the cart before the horse. And by the way, we have FSBA in our corner as well. Have we gone to them? Have we gone to our coalition and seen what other counties are doing as far as FEFP? All these things, I think, need to come well before we appropriate funds to hire some outside person. So I will say that as I talked to different legislators, every one of them said it's never too late to have someone on your team, but that doesn't mean that the person we have on our team isn't already there, meaning our current firm. Maybe it just means that we need to be more proactive in telling them specifically what we need. So for those reasons, at this point, I can't support it.
So I have more questions than comments, I think. You had mentioned looking at the specifics of what's to take place going forward. And I have some concerns about the speed with which this is taking place, given the fact that in the year that I've been on the board, it seems that every time that we rush a decision without thorough information, it doesn't really work out in our favor. And so that, just being completely open, that isn't a genuine concern of mine. Beyond that, I would really like to know what specifically it is that we are proposing. The actual agenda says approve an expenditure to contract with him. The specifics of the information that he submitted to us, I have some concerns about the cost, the length, some of those aspects. So I think before I can weigh in one way or another, I would like to know exactly what it is that we are proposing to go forward with. The other, yes, and then I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Henderson. The other thing that is of concern to me with the time frame and just looking at things that have happened over the previous year or so, it would be very important to me that we make it very clear what it is we expect as far as measurable outcomes, and that we're not just throwing money at something without making sure that we as a district are protected. I think Ms. Henderson had a comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Henderson.
I had a question, because it looks to me that the attachment describes his company, SCG. But you're asking, the recommendation is to approve the contract with him. So I'm not sure what you're trying to do.
His firm, but again, like I said, I want to change what he's proposing, and if he's not amiable to that, then I don't think it'll fly, because I think it's a little much at this point in the game. And I think it needs to be through signing of the budget, not just the end of the last day of session. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Mrs. Belford has a good point. I mean, I support having someone represent our interests, but as with last year's contracts where we got into trouble were, what are the I mean, for example, what would you see in a contract? What are your objectives with this person? What would you see? What would you say? I mean, I can't even get my words together here. Can you?
That's my concern, I did address this a long while back, and I agree with all of you that it's a shame this is ninth hour. I don't like that either. That always bothers me when that happens. But when we bring up a concern well in advance and nothing happens from it, at a certain point in time, you've got to realize that we've made no progress, and you need to jump in and do some research, which is what I did. And I brought something back to the table. I think it's the only thing that's really been brought back to the table. Yes, we have a lobbying firm, and I hate to have to say it publicly, but everybody I spoke to up there says the only time they hear from them is when well, not even, they don't even hear from our behalf. We don't always even hear from them. Matter of fact, I don't even think they've been responsive to us until we threaten to pull their contract. So I think we need somebody, and yes, it's ninth hour, I don't like it, but we've got a significant amount at stake here. The FAFP is a great point also. You know, I don't particularly have any love for this particular gentleman. I don't know him overly well, other than he's been recommended. And I do agree that because the way this happened was through some technical competence on behalf of Dr. Bingley in crafting a formula. I don't think any of us have that capability. Maybe Mixon and Associates does, but if so, they should have sat down with us or somebody, or Dr. Blackburn, and came up with a plan. As far as I know, there's no plan other than they're reacting to this right now. And also, as I understand, been led to believe Juan Mixon, who has the strongest relationships up there, is not involved. He's allowing his daughter and I believe Jessica to take the lead on this. So those are my objectives. Is to succeed at this. It's not, and to be concerned about the amount of money is noble, and I understand that, but we got $2.6 million because of this. I don't see a little harm in carving a little bit out to try and sustain it.
I guess I just want to add to, I'm a little puzzled by a couple of the comments that I know Karen and John, you guys made, because I remember, I guess it was last August or September, we had a workshop or a conversation about legislative efforts. And we had Nixon come down here and we had a conversation. I also recall a conversation with our delegation where they said, we're not doing enough to promote Brevard interest. And we had continued conversation about what do we need to do as a district. And that's when we stepped up our game with Nixon and Associates about, you're not really doing enough. And I know, Desmond, you did a great job of having them, of telling them you're not fulfilling your contract. We're not even for sure we want to continue with that. And I recall several conversations of, do we or do we not hire someone just for Brevard? And I don't think we ever got closure on that. Now, I also concur, this item, as you guys know, I was out of town last week. I had 96 emails when I got back in the country and pulled that up, and so this was a surprise. But then it wasn't, given the timeliness. I did get one call at C, and it was from Senator Altman saying, just wanted you to know, I'm concerned about you guys losing this funding, wanted you to be aware. And so when I saw this, so I am concerned when one of our own senators contacts me and says, did you know, although this is in the budget and this proposal's out there, this may go away. Thad doesn't call me that often, but I take his call seriously. So I would hate to lose this only to come back and have him say, well, I did warn you. So I'm taking his phone call seriously. He didn't call me and say, you need to hire this guy. He's never done that to me. He called me to say, I'm worried. You guys need to come up with a strategy to ensure this doesn't go away. That's what he did. He has never said to me, you need to hire someone. That's why we're having this out here. We're doing this in the sunshine, having this on the agenda so we can discuss this openly. This isn't something secret. I'm just worried that Brevard County is going to lose money that we don't have to lose.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to lose money either, but the reality of this is that Mr. Altman apparently thought it was important enough in December to bring Mr. Ziegler and the superintendent all together to talk about how important it was to hire this guy. I never heard one time about how it was important because we were going to lose that funding. That's not what I heard. In fact, I heard nothing until last Friday. So to say that that's the only reason he's calling is because he's concerned now, the fact is he brought it up in December. That's number one. Number two is that, if we were going to do this, and I understand what you're saying about all the discussion that we had and all that sort of stuff, then What should have been done is put it out for bid so that we can all interview people. I don't even know who this guy is. So I'm not putting my money into somebody I haven't even talked to. I don't even know what his qualifications are. Now, I did talk to plenty of people, and there's information on both sides. Let's just leave it at that. And so I'm not getting, wow, you should hire this guy. That's not what I'm getting. I'm not saying, you should never talk to them either. I'm getting somewhere in the middle, which isn't giving me a whole lot of confidence that this is what we want to do at this time. And I truly just cannot support this.
Let me answer the question about why this wasn't brought forward in December. Dr. Blackburn didn't feel it was the right thing to do. And I respected his logic and his thought process on this, and we talked about finding a proactive solution. And I'm
talking about that. I'm talking about Thad thinking that it was important enough to bring to this district back in December, but only important enough for me to find out last Friday.
But that's Thad. That's not us. That's not us. It's on us. Well, you want to know why you weren't aware of the proposal? Because we were looking for other options. And I don't believe we have another option. And while you may have complete faith in a few legislatures and Mixon and Associates, I don't believe that's enough to get the job done. And we'll make a decision, and at the end of session, we'll find out. And if this doesn't pass, I hope I'm wrong.
First, Mr. Ziegler, let me apologize because I was in no way insinuating that the timing of this was your responsibility or placing blame whatsoever. My only reason in bringing that up is that I think the timing makes it even that much more important that all of the details are there to ensure that we don't get into an issue down the line. And so if it came across as me saying, you dropped the ball or what, that was not at all my intention. It was just, I really, before I can say yay or nay, I really need to know what it is that we're discussing specifically. As far as, I know there was mention of the amount of money. Do we have an amount that perhaps you have discussed with him? What are we looking at as far as timeline, and more specifically, what are the performance measures that we are holding him to in the process to ensure that we're not just, that we're not making a mistake in the direction that we choose to go?
I don't know how you would have a measurable outcome other than success at what our objective is. And he's not guaranteeing that. I don't think any lobbyist or anybody can guarantee that. Mixon Associates can't guarantee that. So I don't know how you would do a measurable outcome. I could, I think we can put some more definition into what it is we expect, and if he doesn't like what we want, then it's dead also. But I was thinking not to exceed like 18,000, and like I said, he needs to stay in there until the governor signs, either it's dead or the governor signs the budget. Now, if you're all willing to take a chance and not get assistance, even though it's late in the game and it's a bit dicey, I don't argue any of it. All I know is we've got legislator telling us that we've got millions of dollars at risk, and we've got to decide, well, do we just let it ride? I'm not willing to let it ride. And if this was, if it wasn't for already receiving the 2.6, I probably wouldn't be as proactive as I am, and I wouldn't be and I would be more concerned about spending the money. But since we got the 2.6, I don't see harm in taking a little bit of it, less than 1% of it, to try and preserve recurring revenue. There's no perfect answer here. There really isn't. Go ahead.
I mean, are we going to get weekly reports? Who's he going to report to? How are we going to know that he's just not getting a paycheck and watching Oprah every day? I mean, that's kind of the questions that I have.
We could request a report on who he's meeting with. And weekly updates. It's 6 weeks of session. I just don't think there's anything wrong with weekly updates. I think that's very reasonable. But I'm not sure we have 3 votes anyhow to go forward. Doesn't sound like John or Karen are supporting it. So
I'm not necessarily opposed to supporting it, but I need to be comfortable with what I'm supporting. And I don't feel like at this point I have that. You know, in the letter that was attached to the agenda item, there was reference to him looking at pulling together the coalition, and the coalition potentially picking up part of the cost of him working on these efforts. I would be interested to know if he has actually done any outreach with them. I would be interested to know what he's willing to do it for. $24,000, you know, we initially, starting January 1st, we would have been looking at 10 weeks. And although I understand that we want him to potentially go through session and the governor actually signing, I would think that the amount of effort that he's putting into it once session closes will decrease substantially because he's not going to be interacting with as many people, dealing with as many issues. It's going to be basically, this is what's come to you and getting the governor to support it. So I think, I just feel like we need more specifics, not only on what our cost is going to be, but also on what is he actually going to do. You know, the letter referenced getting the federally connected student information to be permanent, which is great, but then there was something else that you sent out earlier today that talked about increasing the amount. So I just feel like we need to know what the goals are, what he's willing to commit to, before we can say this is something we need to go forward with, or we don't.
Mrs. Nisi?
How about this? Because we're already in session, we're interested but not willing to make a big commitment. How about if we approve a small amount to get us through to the next board meeting for him to get started and do something between now and February 12th or whatever, where he would do a small amount put together, where he would make a personal phone call to each one of us, share what he's doing, make contact, and do a small portion, and then we make a decision at that point in time, so we get a flavor for how good he is. So we do a small commitment, let him get started, and that way we've had a chance to each talk with him, and then that way we have only expended a small amount of money, we have more in writing, and then we make a final decision for the rest of the session on whatever that next board meeting is.
May I? Oh.
Go ahead, John. I was just...
Well, I like, you know, ideas on the table. I just, you know, first of all, I understand that, but we're the customer. We don't pay for someone to develop their business plan on our time, right?
Great.
So, you know, if this person or any other firm or our firm thinks that they need money from us, they better come with a structured plan that tells me exactly what they're going to do. It's not incumbent on me to build their strategy. If it was, then I wouldn't need to hire somebody. I could just go do it myself. So, no, what I'm saying is that I don't need to spend money for them to, you know, to get started, I guess, and that's just from a business standpoint. I'm sorry, you just don't. We're the customer. Come to me with a solution. I'll decide whether the solution is appropriate or not. As far as you know, whether or not our Mixon and Associates are affectionate on that, I mean, we're all traveling up there next week. We've got a great opportunity to find out exactly how effective they really are. So again, I think that if we are not, you know, I talked to Jessica yesterday for quite some time, outlined some very specific, you know, thoughts and things, and She assures me that after the meeting tomorrow, she's going to come back and discuss those things. I asked her to make sure that I am involved and that she copies me on anything that she finds or anybody that they talk to, including other counties, about this specific item. And certainly if you want that same information, of course, we're their customer, so they'll do the same thing. We've made a commitment here. We're spending a good amount of money for them already. If we think we need somebody else to do something that we haven't even given to our own paid lobbyist firm yet as specifics of what we need, then I think spending more money is just not in our best interest.
I'm not okay with a partial engagement. I understand the logic. It's either they're in or they're out. We're in the 9th hour. While I'd like to do more and get more information, we're out of time. My fault. Should have pushed this beginning of December. I didn't. I thought we'd have some other options on the table. We can choose a lesser amount and see if he bites. But I just think we need to do something. I think we need to participate. I don't particularly consider Mixon Associates, who's been doing this for years and years and years, and I don't think there's a single, correct me if I'm wrong, fellow board member, I don't think there's a single thing that Mixon can hang their hat on they've done specifically for Brevard over that period of time. I don't know why we think all of a sudden they will now. That being said, unless we have a motion to maybe make an offer for services, there's no motion on the table.
Any comment?
Ms. Belford.
That was very reticent, Ms. Belford. Going back to what Ms. Nisi said, and I certainly understand where you're coming from and trying to find a middle ground that works for everyone. I think I would be much more likely to reach out to him and say, look, we're really trying to make something work for you. Why don't you show us between now and February 9th that you can make some things happen, that you can build that coalition, that you can come back to us with numbers that are more palatable, and with specific things that he can promise us. So on our February 9th meeting, we can make a decision based on a sound proposal. In the interim, we're all in Tallahassee next week. We could meet with him, and he could provide those details and see what he can show us that he has been able to do between now and February 9th. And at the February 9th board meeting, if we see that there's value in the work that he's doing, then most certainly we could commit to entering into contract with him. I just can't, and I understand the importance of it, and I desperately want to make sure that we support our legislators in supporting us, but I just can't vote in favor of not having specifics after what we've been through recently.
I think we ought to table this till February 9th.
Okay. Well, then we don't have a motion, so there's no reason to table it. It doesn't go anywhere at this point in time. We'll do our due diligence next week. I honestly don't think it'll come back because I think it'll be way too late in the game unless we speak to numerous legislators who think that we need technical, and this would be technical assistance for the formula and for the FEFP. If they feel that, if we come back and they feel that, yeah, we really could benefit from this, then we can bring something to the next board meeting. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Since I'm the one not going to Tallahassee next week, something I could use each of you to do is I'm still trying to get other districts to do resolutions supporting the anti-corruption bill. So while you're up there, I don't know, are all of you going next week?
Yes.
Would you please talk to the other districts about supporting the anti-corruption bill? As you know, it almost died. It got put back in under another bill, and I'm being asked by the parties involved that any resolutions from other school boards could really impact that bill's ability to get on the floor and get support. So anytime you talk to another school board or another superintendent, please ask them if you could take a copy of our resolution with you, hand that out, remind them. I would really, really appreciate that. Thanks.
Go ahead. Ms. Belford. Sorry if I didn't say it polite.
Ms. Nisi, I would be happy to work on that issue while we're up there. Would you mind, just for the sake of having things handy, I know that that was incorporated into another bill. I think Representative Workman was still working on it, but could you give us the specifics on that bill so we can have it handy for folks, and then also perhaps forward us the resolution again so we have it at our fingertips? That would be awesome.
She actually has a packet also with the editorials attached, all the editorials explaining all the steps, because I sent that out to them. So if you'd send them that packet, that would be great.
Question. Is there any kind of expectation being directed towards me to have any other conversation, review, or anything to do with this particular company whatsoever?
No, not at this time.
Thank you.
Pending nothing else to discuss, this meeting is adjourned.